Now, welcome to another edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Padme Amidala and comparing them to all the other characters we've done thus far, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. But before getting to all that, you can of course already nominate and or vote for which character we do next. Just head down and respond to my pinned comment below with the character you'd like to see next, or vote with a thumbs up if it's already listed. Whatever comment gets the most votes in the next 24 hours or so will be the winner. Okay, and now on to the results for Padme, where we'll see that 19% of voters gave her an A, 54% then thought she was a B tier character, 22% thought C, which then left 3% to give her a D, and a final 2% to give her an F. And when we do all the math here and consider A a score of 5 and F a score of 1, Padme Amidala ends up with an average score of 3.85, which puts her into 18th place overall. Which is, I have to say, a bit lower than expected. I thought she'd at least get over a 4, but that's not the case. And in the comments, which we'll get to in just a moment, there were certainly reasons given as to why she was marked down by some. But before we do get to them, let me once again, and as always, say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches the videos. It's all greatly appreciated. And now let's start, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Abraham Levin, who said, "Padme to me represents an ideal that can't be reached. She's the lover the hero can never have, and in his pursuit for her, loses her forever. All throughout the Clone Wars, she's a paragon for peace and liberty, while the galaxy is thrust further and further into war and authoritarianism. Her victories are short-lived. However, in her last hour, she literally births the new hope that will save the galaxy and accomplish what she never could." Very well said, and Padme is almost that paragon or perfect character, the one who always does everything right, leads by example, inspires everyone around her, and almost always wins or saves the day. In fact, you could almost say or argue the only real or costly mistake she ever makes is falling for Anakin, and or saying or doing nothing about him admitting that he murdered an entire village of Tusken Raiders. And after learning he did that, she essentially says to him, "Hey, mistakes happen, you're only human after all." Anyway, setting that aside, considering she is this near-perfect character, it may lead some to ask, why doesn't she get the Mary Sue label like Rey from the sequel trilogy often does? And of the some 1,000 comments left on this poll, I don't recall a single one that called her that. And actually, it was pretty much the opposite for most people. Many people lamented or complained that she didn't do more throughout the trilogy, especially in Episode 3, and we'll get to some of those comments in a bit. And of course, the main reasons for this are the way she's presented and what her place and purpose is in the story. And I'll try to keep this brief. Again, we've got many more comments to get to. But I mean, for one, when we first meet her, she's a 14-year-old elected queen or elected leader of an entire planet. That alone tells us there is something very special or unique about her. Something so special that her entire people chose her to lead them at such a young age. So even though we don't really know much about her or her backstory, that alone tells us we should expect a rare and exceptional leader and an overall great person. Another key here is she can't and doesn't do everything by herself. She's a great leader and source of inspiration, but at every turn she needs others to help her or carry out her plans. And yeah, she can certainly kick a little butt when she needs to, but even in that respect, she's not out there doing it all by herself. Another thing we have to keep in mind is her story ends tragically, and mainly because of that one mistake she makes, which is, again, Anakin and not really addressing some of his problems. And speaking of Anakin, much like him, even though she has all this greatness and ability, and even though she has all these other victories, she fails to save that one person she loves above all else. And think about it, she can save her planet and her people from a secret Sith Lord or his plan, but she can't save the one guy she loves from that very same Sith Lord. And going along with all this, we have a comment here from Matthew Hogan, who said, "She is a strong female character without being overpowered. I would give her an A, but she was really underused in Attack of the Clones. I get it was meant to kind of like provide a base for Anakin and Padme's relationship, but I just think they could have done more with her in that movie." And I don't know that I'd say she was underused in Attack of the Clones, though I'd certainly say she could have been utilized in a completely different way, and that the whole love story between her and Anakin could have been very different. I mean, once the two get back to Naboo, the middle of the movie turns into a picnic for them, quite literally, when it should have been them still on the run, or at least worrying about assassins and falling for each other as they maybe try to fight for their lives. Instead, all of that is completely forgotten for the sake of this awkward, forced love. where Padme falls for him because of reasons, I guess. That said, I do agree with you that she's not an overpowered character or anything like that. As I was saying in response to the previous comment about her being a paragon type character, though that might be the case, she still needs others, and she still shows weakness and vulnerability through Anakin, maybe too much so, some might argue, and she still fails, and you can even say gives up in the end and dies of a broken heart of all things. Which then leads us to this comment from Rabbi Deadpool, who said, "The relationship between her and Anakin is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. It can be a little cringe to watch sometimes, but when Padme is giving birth and sees Obi-Wan, not Anakin, you can kind of understand why she died of sadness. Solid B for me. Things could have been a little better, but I still think she still added another good character." Then there's also this comment from Mr. Scully, who said, "There is one thing that holds her back from A. She lost the will to live." And, I've always kind of liked the idea or theory that somehow Palpatine drained her life force from afar and maybe even used it to save Darth Vader. That might sound like a bit much, but a young, healthy 20-something-year-old losing her will to live after giving birth to twins is also a bit much. And I think I get what Lucas was going for here. He was trying to make this feel like some type of epic Shakespearean tragedy in the end. Either that or he couldn't figure out how else to kill off Padme at this point. But it does feel like it is a bit cheesy that she died of a broken heart, essentially. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I know sometimes in the real world people do more or less die from a broken heart, but the thing is, that tends to only happen in the elderly. My own grandfather passed away weeks after my grandmother, despite otherwise being rather healthy for his age, so it does apparently happen. But thankfully, heartaches don't seem to kill people in their 20s, because if people that age could die from bad breakups or broken hearts, that would be the #1 killer in the world. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Stephen Woods, who said, "Padme is amazing because she did something only a few characters can claim. She surprised the Emperor. That moment in The Phantom Menace when she tells Palpatine she's returning home to fight for her people and die if necessary, you see the briefest flick of the eyebrows that tells you he didn't expect this." Padme is probably one of the few characters that Palpatine had a deep personal hatred for, alongside Luke, Yoda, and Obi-Wan. Not to say he didn't hate others, but these in particular were such a thorn in his side. Also, The Phantom Menace is completely Padme's story. Qui-Gon may be the main protagonist, but everything is centered around her, with Anakin coming in second. And in many ways, at least during his rise to power or the prequels, Padme is the greatest rival Palpatine has. She is, especially when it comes to politics or core beliefs, his exact opposite in pretty much every way imaginable. And I have always enjoyed that moment you mentioned where she tells Palpatine she's returning to Naboo, which he didn't see coming and thinks will work to his advantage. And though, yeah, it doesn't go the way he planned exactly and he ends up losing Darth Maul, it still does work out for him for the most part. He becomes Supreme Chancellor. But it's in that moment that I think he realizes she is indeed going to be quite the thorn in his side going forward. Okay, and moving on now, we have this comment from Miyagi, who said, "She is the rebellion. Wish they had given her more of an honor in the sequels, another missed opportunity. There's so much about Padme that could be great storytelling, especially with the recent comics about Vader finding her tomb on Naboo. The movies simply don't flesh her out enough, but she's everything that Luke and Leia stood for. She was the light that Vader ultimately saw in his son. Great potential, not so great result. C or a B is very fitting." Then we also had this comment from Aso Akil, who said, "I gave her an A. Padme is one of my favorite characters. She's a good politician who always fought for peace in the Senate, but also accepted that sometimes aggressive negotiations were needed. Like Leia, she's smart, brave, and beautiful, but at the same time, not perfect. And for me, this is a good example of strong female characters. I only wish they kept the deleted scenes in Episode 3, in which she, Bail Organa, and Mon Mothma discussed Palpatine's increasing power, to give Padme a bigger role in this film, as well as seeing her contribution to the creation of the Rebel Alliance." Also here we have this comment from Astro Mickey, who said, "The deleted scenes in Episode 3 would have probably helped her get more exposure and show that she wasn't just a background character." Then also this one from Diamond360, who said, "In the first film and Clone Wars, she was a capable badass, but in 2 and 3, she just became, oh, Anakin." Then this one from Samuel Winkler, who said, "I think your fiancé stated it best. Padme showed her strength and tact beautifully in the Clone Wars and in Episode 1, but in Episode 2 and 3, her personality becomes solely that she loved Anakin. Solid B for me." And a lot of people in the comments pointed out that in the Clone Wars animated series, they do a great job of rounding out her character and really making her relationship with Anakin feel more realistic and grounded, and less like something out of a fairy tale that the movies kind of make it out to be. And personally, I always just love the little knowing looks they give each other in the public settings, or the way they address each other so formally, yet there's that undertone of playfulness. It's great stuff. Anyway, it is a shame that the whole rebellion or delegation of 2000 subplot got cut from Revenge of the Sith, where we see Padme and a few other senators like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma discussing what to do about Palpatine and his growing power and all the amendments they're making to the Constitution, and how he's now appointed regional governors, which seems to circumvent the power or need for the entire Senate. And I mean, I do understand it would have likely messed with the pacing of the movie, and we didn't need to see all that, but again, it gives Padme much more to do. It makes her an important founder of the rebellion, essentially, and it really sets the stage for the political landscape of the original trilogy. And unlike some, I do enjoy the politics of Star Wars, and one of the most disappointing aspects of the sequels, in my opinion, was how they completely ignored them. Alright, and now onto this comment from The Last Mikester, who said, "So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause." I think this sums up what has happened to the galaxy quite well. She knows that this is the end of something that she has fought for her whole life, and in losing it, she is only left with her lover, who ends up being her downfall, and her unborn children, who would be the last hopes for all those who refuse to accept the tyrannical rule of the Empire. She is fierce and determined, but kind and compassionate, traits that she would pass on to her daughter, who would carry on her legacy and become a leader of the rebellion that would eventually destroy the very same power that defeated her mother. We also then had this one from Zing, who said, "So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. She is the best senator in the Republic." Okay, so certainly the prequels are known for their quotable one-liners, and many of them have become some of the most famous and popular memes of all time. But that one line about liberty dying to thunderous applause is a terrific one because of how very true it is, and how it sums up the whole trilogy. I mean, if you want to conquer a group of people, or a nation, or even a galaxy, sure, you can use brute force and maybe get it done, and then you rule over an angry and resentful populace who want to see your demise or see you overthrown. But if you instead first convince them there is something wrong or to be afraid of, and then you convince them you're the one who can fix it or protect them from it, not only will they probably willingly give up their freedom in the name of security, but they're going to love you for it too. And that's exactly what Palpatine does in the prequels. They're sitting there cheering this guy, declaring himself their emperor, and it's perfectly summed up in that one line from Padme. Alright, and now time for just a few final comments, starting with this one from Ashley C., who said, "Padme is such an interesting character, and compared to the other prequel characters, her personality and true nature are so complex. Unfortunately, most of the material about Padme didn't make it into the movies, and is almost entirely in the books and comics surrounding her. I highly recommend A Queen's Shadow and A Queen's Peril, both by E.K. Johnston. They really dive into Padme's true personality, backstory, and family life. I think Padme would have been a more relatable and more realistic character had said material made it into the movies. For me, in the movies, we don't get enough of Padme's true self. We mostly only saw her professional and regal side. She and Sabe were in queen mode almost all of The Phantom Menace. We don't see her true side for half of Attack of the Clones, and she was barely in Revenge of the Sith except for the iconic scenes. Overall, she's got so many qualities, and she's one of the most important characters in Star Wars because of the politics and of course being Luke and Leia's mom. However, the lack of real personality in the movies leads me to give her a B ranking. Next then we have this comment from Blake Davison, who said, "Her character unfortunately sort of devolutionized with Revenge of the Sith. She was tough, perceptive, and agile in the first two prequel films, and in the Clone Wars, but she became sort of helpless in Revenge of the Sith. I've heard people say that her love for Anakin and sadness over his turn made her weak, but I feel like it would have been more in line with her character if she would have tried to stop him herself in Revenge of the Sith, even despite her heartbreak." Then this comment from Dimaria, who said, "She's the strong, brave, smart, and beautiful woman that every man wants to marry, a hero in her own right, and considering that both of her children were powerful Force wielders, one wonders whether she herself might have been strong in the Force." Then this comment from Domino Effect, who said, "She's the one senator who actually cared for the Republic's well-being." Also had this one from Emma Ramsayer, who said, "Fashion-wise, she's the best damn character." And finally this one from JJ Plagiarisms, who said, "One of the most morally uplifting characters, selfless, idealistic, and brave. B for me, it was sad to see her die." Couldn't agree more, and despite her actual death maybe being a bit cheesy, her story and demise does add to the overall tragedy of the prequels. Because right away, in that first movie in The Phantom Menace, we see a truly inspiring leader, one who cares about her people, leads by example, and do whatever she must to protect them. We see someone who would and could no doubt be a capable leader of the entire Republic herself one day, but instead of that happening, Palpatine, again her exact opposite, not only convinces the galaxy he's the savior, but along the way, he destroys everything she loves and cares about, as well as destroying her as well. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about Padme, or what I or anyone else had to say about her in this video. You can of course also nominate and or vote for which character we do next. Either way, do leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.